Uh, all right, Justin. So thanks for coming on the show with me and talking to me today. We were talking off the mic, and I think I looked at your bio. So you're an attorney like me, but you're a recovering attorney. You got out when the getting was good, and I'm still stuck in the profession, right?
Yeah, there's an old joke. I had an attorney tell me once that the happiest attorneys are the ones that aren't practicing.
For sure. And I've been look, it's a good education, right? You want to know the law and how to maneuver the law and do research on things and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the practice of law is, I would give it up if I had other opportunities that I thought were better. And every once in a while, I toy with those. But today's about you. So I want to talk about, a little bit about your background in law and then how you got into your family business. And I was saying this off the mic, you're a real serial entrepreneur. Like you got businesses going on, you're always looking to expand things, and that's what real true entrepreneurship is about. There's a lot of people, and we did say this off the mic too, that figure out a business and they're good at it, but when they try to go into other businesses or transition or they sell their business, they struggle because they haven't really developed, whether it's at school or on the street, right? They haven't developed the skills you need to be successful in any business. That's different than being successful in one business. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that being in a family business has enabled myself and my brother, who I work very closely with, to find new opportunities and use kind of the main family business as like a launching pad.
Right.
And being in a few different business areas, and I'm sure obviously get into the different aspects of tech shredders and Intech and some of the other things
Sure.
that I've been in. It's also finding opportunities where is something that's interesting and kind of taking that leap. There's no playbook. A
Right.
lot of times with entrepreneurship, you have to come up with the solution to a problem that most likely someone else hasn't solved yet. So that's what's
Right.
always exciting about it.
All right, good. So let's go back. I think you said you started some businesses even before law school, right? You were always kind of a business kid. You want to tell me about your background and,
Yeah.
what made you go to
So
law school? I don't know.
I wound up graduating college in 2008, which the height of the financial
Yeah, that was the
recession and
mortgage crisis, right?
the mortgage
Yeah.
crisis. I was interning at a financial firm that summer of 2007, and got to see everything start melting down. And I was probably on the most traditional path you could think of.
Yeah.
I graduated high school, went to college, studied finance. Back then everybody wanted to become an investment banker. That was the
Right.
coolest
Go to
thing to
Wall
do.
Street. Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Or become a trader. And that was the path that I thought I was on. And in 2008, the writing was on the wall that no banks were hiring. There was going to be a hiring freeze. So I
Right.
stayed on the most traditional path. What do you do if you can't get a job out of college? You go back to school. So I went
Right.
to law
Every Jewish
school.
grandmother's dream, right? That's
Yeah,
why I went to law school, because my grandmother had been pestering me for years and years and years. Yeah, that's why.
absolutely. And basically what happened is when I was in law school, I had initially went from the standpoint of, I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to use this as an education.
Right.
I was very fortunate to be able to go to law school and, start studying without necessarily the pressure of, I need to get a big, law job and,
Right.
go through that route. But as everybody goes through law school, you kind of realize, oh, the big law job seems exciting. And then you kind of go through, maybe it's not as exciting. You want to go to a smaller place where you get more hands-on experience.
Right.
And it
It's
wasn't
different.
until my last year of law school, I was in this really unique class where it was kind of like almost like an independent study. There was like 5 people in the class, and the teacher said, we are going to basically develop software. And
Oh,
I have
okay.
no coding skills. Like I am,
Right.
I have an idea about how code works,
Well,
but
you're
I
in
am
law
not.
school. It's not engineering school, right? So you're
Yeah.
like, what? Yeah.
So I was like flabbergasted. Like, I have no idea how to create software. And he goes, no, you just start with a piece of paper and you draw what you want to happen. Like that's
Yeah, you storyboard
the
it type of thing,
impetus.
right? Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
when you signed up for the course, did you know that this is what was going to happen or no?
The class had to do with legal information systems. So it was like a
Oh,
very
okay.
vague thing, but I
Yeah.
was interested in tech, and I liked reading, startup blogs. This was in 2011, 2010, kind of like the real beginning of, I would say, the New York City tech, renaissance, so to
Right.
say.
Sure.
Foursquare had just come out, and people were using Facebook and Twitter,
Right.
and they just kind of come out of their only being open for the college campuses. So there's
Yeah.
this whole like tech focus in New York, and I thought this class would be an interesting idea. Long story short, I have no idea how to develop software, and I have no idea what software a law firm needs, because I basically only interned at a law firm. I didn't really understand their pain points,
Right.
but I knew what pain points a law student had. And one of the big things in law school was to take your notes, combine it with other people in your study group. It's a very collaborative aspect with your close group of friends.
Right.
And I'm always in class and I'm trying to write down everything the teacher is saying.
Yeah. And that's why you did it with your friends, because you're like, what did I miss? Right. Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly. So I remember, and this was kind of when Google Docs started coming out, and I go,
Okay.
man, I'd love to be able to like see what the people in my study group wrote. If I missed something, there's, my doc, and then I'm looking at their doc, and
Right.
me and this other gentleman in the class, in the in the software, legal software class,
Right.
said, why don't we combine these two documents so that they're almost talking to each other? They're connected in a way. So if I'm typing out notes,
Right.
then my friend's typing out notes, and I can see every single person in the study group's notes.
Right. Kind of like the way Google Docs works today.
Exactly. And
Right.
to be honest, it was like the infancy of Google Docs. So what they didn't have the whole drive and everything. So
Right.
what we literally did was we took the Google Doc, because it's basically a unique URL, and we connected them together. So you'd go to this website and all of your study groups notes would be there. And then you would have multiple tabs, and you would see on the same page, and you could click through, Mike and Sally and Ben's notes. So
Right.
you could go through, and it was kind of like a little bit of a hack and a little bit of a, our initial, most, minimum viable product. But it gave me this, like, I was like, holy crap, like people are using this. And we went to different teachers and we said, could we present this to the school, like to your classroom? And people started using it.
Sure.
And I remember we got one group of students at Cardozo Law School to use it.
Mm-hmm.
This was like our first like real beta test. And they used it for like 5 minutes. It completely broke. And we learned more in those 5 minutes. Just
because you don't really anticipate how people use things, right?
Yeah, you have an idea, and you can, we spent hours coming up with the better name. How would we pitch this? And all of that was great. But the reality is if you don't take action and you don't start doing it, you'll never really learn anything. And in the 5 minutes that someone else used the product, we learned so much more. And it wound up being something we kind of like messed around with. And we did like a startup competition, and, it was a fun experience. But that was the real impetus. That was, hey, like maybe there's something more to just
inflection point. If you look back,
being
so it was basically like it was like a note taking, note sharing system platform, if you will. It wasn't an app in those days. We didn't have apps, right? So,
and there was a bigger idea, like, could you connect a YouTube video so as you're taking notes, it's grabbing the time frame, and so you could go back. So if the teacher had recorded a lecture and I took my notes and I don't understand something, can I click on it? And so there was a whole idea behind it, but we were not super technical, so we kind of had a limitation. And after law school, I basically kind of bounced around a little bit. I had studied intellectual property and business formation. I always had kind of that tinge of working with entrepreneurs. And basically what happened is I really wanted to break into tech. I kind of seen this, I guess, growth wave coming in New York City.
It's still growing. Yeah.
And I created this organization called Suits to Silicon Alley. And, I wasn't, a technical person at the time. They really wanted to hire engineers, but I was like, how do I break in being a more, business, or in this case, law or finance related? And I just started putting people on panels. I was like, this was when meetup.com was very popular. I created a meetup, and I would just go out and I would reach out to people that were doing interesting things, or had maybe transitioned from being in banking to startups. And I just started putting people on panels, and I got a first job from that. And then one
So
of
when
the
you say putting
first,
them on panels, you were like creating a meetup with a panel that you put together on some topic, and then
yeah,
people would come to the meetup.
yeah, there'd be a topic on what is business development, or how
Oh,
do you
okay.
land a job from, working at a Wall Street, bank, to working at a tech startup.
Oh, okay.
And one of the first members wound up becoming the general manager for Caviar, which is a food delivery app at the time in New
Okay.
York City.
One of the earlier
And
ones.
one of the earlier ones. It was right when in 2013, 2014, there was a real big wave of Postmates had just launched. This
Right.
company
Postmates. Yep.
Caviar had just launched. Seamless, which had been acquired and turned into Grubhub, was
Right.
really getting some traction.
Yeah.
And he reached out to me, and I came on as the head of New York sales, really focusing on the corporate market. How do we grow the corporate business? And I had no sales experience, so I kind of like felt I'd made this transition from the the law and the more, I guess, the suit world to the
Right.
startup world, and I was kind of on my way, and it was a great experience. I was there for a little over a year. When I got there, we were 20 people, and by the time I left, we were over 100. We'd actually been
Okay.
acquired by Square.
Okay. Not
And it was
Squarespace. Square. Square's
Square, yeah,
the processing app, right? Where you
yeah, the
swipe your
credit
card.
card
Now, let me
reader.
ask you a question. You said you had no sales experience, right? You're a lawyer, which I guess gives people more confidence in us than they probably should, right? Oh, you're a lawyer. You know everything. So how did you convince this guy to hire you as part of his sales team? You had no sales experience.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you really kind of peel back the onion on what sales is, I mean, people are doing sales when they're going for their first job. You're basically
Right,
trying to
all the
solve
time.
someone's challenge and say, listen, you don't have a role here. Here's why I'm a good fit. And a lot of it was about kind of sales in terms of like a growth mentality. How can we create awareness? So we created like a street team, and handed out flyers in front of Goldman Sachs when the bankers were walking in. I
Right.
found there was this database list for all the hedge funds that are registered with the SEC, and I started sending them handwritten letters and following up with calls. And I was kind of bouncing around a little bit, but I came to him and I said, here's my plan. Here's how I would, grow your business.
Yeah.
And one of the
You
beautiful things about the
convinced him.
service,
Yeah.
one of the beautiful things about the service is it's not complex.
Right.
It's food. Everybody
Right.
kind of loves food, and, give me a shot at it, because you've seen I've been able to, grow these other organizations and do these things. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I got it. So, and is Caviar still around, or did it get acquired and merged into something else when Square bought them? Or
Yeah. So when Square acquired them, they left them alone as their own freestanding app, and they still are. They were always kind of a little bit more like a premium, like get better restaurants, very focused on taking high quality photos of food. Square acquired them in 2014.
okay,
And then in 2019, I believe, they sold them to DoorDash.
so they're part of the DoorDash
So
family
they're part of the DoorDash, but they're still its own freestanding app.
app and
And
whatever. Okay,
I remember when my wife gave birth to my son, she had like a request for this really great Thai restaurant, and we were in the city at the time, and I was like, "Oh, we're going on Caviar. Like, I'm not going to worry
and they
about
had
going
it
out to
right.
any." Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I was just listening to, as a podcaster, I listen to a lot of podcasts, right? So I like Wondery is a company puts a lot of business podcasts out, and they just had Business Wars. It was like a 6-episode series on delivery wars, and they talked about DoorDash and Postmates and Grubhub and Seamless when they purchased them. And because Grubhub was more of like an ordering app, it wasn't really delivery. At first they didn't do that stuff. So but the weird thing is that I don't remember them ever mentioning Caviar.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know why. Maybe it just wasn't when that big of a player, or they had already been acquired by DoorDash at that point. I don't know.
Yeah, it was definitely a great experience. I mean, we were a small company. We raised some money, and, the founders and, the initial investors, it was like a success story. I think they sold for about $100 million.
Oh
So
wow, yeah,
at the time, getting
right,
acquired by Square, and what's happened since then, they've done pretty well. But it was just an incredible experience to kind of be in that, hey, we don't have a playbook. There's no roadmap. You kind of have to
right,
figure it out. And the way they were doing sales in San Francisco, where they started, was so different than how they were doing sales in New York, because there wasn't as much of an entrenched startup ecosystem. There used to be a big thing with what are all the perks you're getting,
Right.
the ping pong table,
Right.
the limited meals,
Yeah.
you walk into a WeWork and they have the beer on tap. That
Right.
wasn't really part of New York
Jeans and a
yet.
t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. New York, we were still suits and ties and stuff, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So you worked in New York, in their New York office?
Yeah, I worked in their New York office, and essentially what happened is they did a bit of a pivot. They didn't really want to focus on that corporate market anymore. And there was another gentleman that I was working with, and we both kind of found ourselves, hey, we want to do something in this space. We think it's interesting. What would we do?
Okay.
And always dealing with the customers, there was always an issue like, what do I order? Like the menu is so big. I have so
Right.
much decision fatigue. You go out to a restaurant with friends and you're, oh, what are we going to order? And, one person has to kind of corral everybody, and the waiter is giving you recommendations, but the waiter might not know if you have a food allergy, you don't like certain food. So the idea we came up with was, how can we help people eat healthier or
Okay.
smarter, we would call it. So we would basically give them a curated list of 4 options each night. We texted it to them.
Based on their profile.
Yeah. So we gave them an initial questionnaire of different foods and different meals that they could, get, which they like, which they don't like, if they have an allergy or
Right.
certain foods that they don't eat. And each night we would send them a list. And as they selected or didn't like things, the system would kind of learn a little bit more about them.
Okay.
And so when you walk into a restaurant, the idea was, instead of seeing like a big menu, you would just see like, what is specific to me? And there's 4 or
So
5
you would go to a
options.
restaurant that's in this program and you would get a customized menu for you based on your preferences.
Yeah. So here's how we did it. We took
Wow.
all the
Good
different
idea.
food delivery apps at the time.
Yeah.
We took down, let's say the top 20 or 30 restaurants that had, we would call it like a healthy tinge to it.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with Bear Burger, they're kind of a burger joint, but they're a little bit more health conscious.
Clean eating, better burger.
Clean eating.
Yeah. Yeah. They just opened one in our town. Yeah.
And we would take the approach of, we're not going to convince you to eat Sprouts and, boiled fish every night.
Right.
We're going to take the approach of, if you want a burger, get a burger, but maybe you get a turkey burger, maybe you get a bison burger with sweet potato fries instead of French fries.
Right.
So that was kind of the whole, like, spin that we were trying to put on it. And all we did is we basically had this massive Excel file. We would do like a mail merge, and it would generate these, going back to, again, Google Docs, and we would
Right.
send the Google Docs to people in a text message, and then they would respond to us with which meal they wanted, and we would purchase it for them. It would be delivered. And one of the funniest things I remember, just because everything's always interconnected in the beginning,
Yeah.
is I had a person I studied with for the bar, and he was, he had set up this tutoring company, and he was tutoring people that were studying for the bar. And he was the first like big promoter. He was like, everybody that I, study with for the bar was using our service because, their time is very precious. They can't
Right.
think about like what they're eating, but they also don't want to eat unhealthy because it's just really going to make them lethargic and, kind of go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So what was the name of that company?
That was called Curb Plated. And what happened with that is we'd raised a little bit of money. I was through, there was a program called General Assembly. They were like a startup school in the city. And they had basically an opportunity where they would invest in you through an incubator called 500 Startups. And we got like $10,000. We got, opportunity and office space in San Francisco for a summer. And we got to go out there, and, we were kind of, it was like my more legitimate, the note-taking app was like a hack. This was like, wow, I'm like really doing this. We formed an LLC. We formed, we had stock. It was like the first, like, wow, like we actually created something and people are using the product, but more importantly, people were paying us for it.
Right. Oh, they were.
And yeah. And the biggest challenge I would say in the food delivery space at the time was, it was like a VC land grab. Like everybody was getting subsidized. Remember the time when you would take an Uber and it was like so much cheaper than a taxi?
Yeah.
It was because VC money was just flowing into the tech space.
Right, was subsidizing. Sure.
And we looked at it and we're like, how many meals do we need to sell to make any money? Like, this is insane. You're making pennies or you're losing money.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those experiences where the writing was kind of on the wall. Like, we need to either try and raise a lot of money and do this, but it wasn't something that I think that had enough initial staying power. There was a little bit of, were we too far ahead of our time? Like, to open up an app and not have all your options available to you, that's a little bit more of like a restrictive approach. But I do think down the line, there is something to be said for curating and providing someone with, their specific options.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, isn't there something where people get paralyzed sometimes when there's too many choices, and that's like a fear people have. They go to a restaurant, they're like, oh my God, I can't decide. So it's actually, it makes sense. But, it's funny, you go back to the note-taking thing. When I remember I was at Cornell, so this was in the late 80s, right? I know I look young, but I'm not as young as you are. So there was two kids from the business school, the graduate school, that started a service. Now, there was no digital there were computers, but they weren't all connected. There was no internet or anything like that. They were hiring grad students to like go to your lecture and they would take notes because they were graduated already, right? So they're at a different level than you are as a freshman or sophomore or whatever. And you would subscribe to the service, and then they would email you copies of the notes from the note takers. It was like Cliff Notes. I mean, you weren't supposed to, the deal was you weren't supposed to skip class, but I'm sure people did. And then he expanded to other schools. I don't know whatever happened to the business, but obviously
you weren't skipping class. You hired an agent.
Right, exactly, to go. So in theory, I looked at it, I said, oh my God, what's going to happen is there'll be like 4 note takers in the class. No one else is going to be there, but yeah, so they were probably before their time in terms of that kind of stuff. But okay, so that was a learning experience, right? And that company never went anywhere. Kerr-plated?
Yeah, so it was just one of those situations where the writing was kind of on the wall. Like, for us to grow this, we didn't necessarily have the stomach for it.
Right.
And we also didn't love the idea of selling stuff and like making no money. Like, I wanted
burning
to
through the capital,
be a
right?
business, not be in a weird sense like a charity.
Yeah.
And the opportunity presented itself. We have a family business, a truck leasing business, where there was an opportunity for me to come, work in the business and take some of the, skills that I had acquired now, launching a business, running a sales team, and take that experience and, bring it into the family business. So at the time in, 2015, we had a used truck lot that we were selling trucks out of in Linden. And that was really kind of there for when, sometimes you get a repossessed truck or a truck off of lease and we need to remarket it. It really wasn't something that was like the future of the company. It was always like a side thing. Like, we need to, dispose of these vehicles.
Yeah. And you want to make the most out of your inventory. So you don't just push them off a cliff. You want to get money out of them, right? I mean, it's salvage basically.
Absolutely. So the opportunity was, hey, Justin, come here. We have this used truck lot. I grew up in this family business, but
who's in the business at this point? Your mother, your father, siblings?
Yeah. So my father started the business in 86. It was actually the year I was born.
Okay.
He started with another business partner. He started with another business partner. He wound up buying him out in the early to mid 90s. Okay. And I have a brother who's 10 years older than me. He started in the business right after the .com,
bubble burst.
Yeah,
right.
the first
.com and all that stuff. Yeah. Okay.
And I have a sister who helps out with a lot of our marketing, and this family business has been something that's been a part of me my whole life. I've kind of like pushed it away a little bit when I was younger. Like, oh well, I don't necessarily know if I really want to go work in a family business.
Right.
I'd kind of seen this as a little bit of the thing that I did was a failure, and like, this is what I'm doing,
right,
as my fallback.
Right.
But one thing I learned really early on, a family business is not about walking in to an office and, you have a corner office and you just sit back and relax and there's no work to be done.
No.
The business will not thrive and get passed on to the next generation if you don't work and basically adapt the business. When the business started in 1986, my father was doing auto leasing. This was before manufacturers,
commercial, like fleet leasing and stuff like that.
Not even like, this was, a consumer lease.
Okay.
This was,
Right.
I was like, Dad, how did you get your first customer? He goes, I put an ad in the Temple paper,
Right. There
and a
you
guy
go.
from
There was
Temple
no
called
Craigslist
me.
in '86. Yeah, exactly.
And
So,
it's,
and basically what leasing is, right, is he went and bought the car and now he's renting it to someone else, is right, in its simplest
yeah, at a
form.
very simplest form. And the
Yeah.
leasing that he kind of evolved into was more of like the lease to own programs. So
Okay.
he would take a lot of the frustration about buying a car, in the days going into a dealership. Everybody's been in this situation. Like, you go into a dealership and they almost
It's
do
the
everything
worst
they cannot
experience.
to sell you the vehicle.
Exactly.
But you're like, I need the car.
Right. Yeah, that's a horrible experience going into talk about an industry needs regulation. Oh my God, from a consumer standpoint. Okay. So your dad got started in consumer leasing, really.
Yeah. And even before then, he had some car dealerships. So he always kind of came from the auto
Oh,
space.
got it.
My
Okay.
grandfather actually had a gas station. They were selling used, cars at a time after they were fixing them up with the repair shop.
Sure. Right.
And that's how my dad kind of got into the auto industry. Wound up having an AMC dealership in the late 70s, early
Sure.
80s.
AMC Jeep, right? Jeep, and it becomes AMC Jeep Eagle, right? And then they got
Yeah.
bought by, is Jeep a separate company now,
Jeep now
or
then got
Chrysler?
acquired by Chrysler. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I remember there was a little AMC place near my house. I remember, and the Jeeps. It was just a totally different, yeah, business
Where did you grow up?
in West Caldwell. And there was
Oh,
this little. The building's still there. It's like occupied by a charity
on
now, I think.
Bloomfield.
It's yeah, it was on Bloomfield Avenue.
That was my dad's AMC dealership.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, right
Uh,
across in the across the road was like King's Supermarket or whatever it
yeah.
was before then. Yeah. Well, now it's occupied by. Did you guys own the building too?
Yeah, he owned the building, and
I
this was all
sold it
before I
years
was
later,
born. So
right?
I never was there. I never saw anything.
Yeah.
But I have all
I
the old
just drove by
stories
it the
of,
other day because I have a client with a Meineke. Well, they own a building, so they rent to a couple of auto, Meineke and stuff like that down the road. So I was turning at where the Jeep place used to be. There's a cut through road that goes over to Passaic Avenue, and it's now the Bridge, which is a charitable organization that I think is a rehab type of an organization, and they occupy the building now. I don't know if they own it or not, but yeah, I remember that. I remember that
that's
vividly.
funny.
Yeah.
And basically, he was doing all these, consumer leasing, and the manufacturers started having their subsidized programs, and he needed to reinvent himself. So he found a niche with, used trucks, especially tow trucks at the time.
Okay.
And I said, how did you get into this? He goes, well, there was a dealer in, New Jersey and New York. I'd go there like every day. I would stop by, I'd bring them coffee, and, really learning. Like, my dad is the, quintessential salesperson. He likes to say he has the gift of gab, and, very old school, like, I'm going to pound the pavement. I'm just going to make it work. When I was
Right.
born, he had, essentially lost the dealership, and he was starting over fresh. And, when, the auto leasing needed to transition out of consumer into more of commercial, he kind of figured out a way.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of been, like, I would say, the nexus, or like the real story of our family. It's like the evolution of a family business. How do you continue to, reinvent itself and evolve the family business
As things change? Sure. That's why a lot of businesses don't make it next generation. They don't evolve. They're still doing it the same way in the world. I'm sure your dad gets frustrated with the way people are so insulated nowadays. You can't pound the pavement as much, pick up the phone, show up at a place. They're texting you, they're insulated, they're on email, and they're behind these electronic walls. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a different. My dad grew up in the insurance business. 1965 is the same thing. You're knocking on people's doors, you're meeting them at their houses on the kitchen tables, and it's all hand to hand combat, if you will. And it's a
Exactly.
different
Yeah.
world. It's a different world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, as the kind of the business, began to grow, and the truck space, we were, I think I was like in middle school and maybe elementary school at the time. My brother
Yeah.
was, in college, and he had the opportunity to kind of come in the early 2000s. And one of the first things that he wound up doing was working at the used truck lot. We had a bunch of repos at the time. The economy, with 9/11 and everything, had,
To that point, he wasn't leasing commercial vehicles. He was reselling
so we would
trucks and
sometimes resell the trucks. We'd put it onto a lease. It would be a good way to acquire a new customer.
oh,
We had
okay.
the lot, but the core business was always the truck leasing. So
Oh,
these
okay.
trucks
It
that came
was.
back might have been, from a repossession, or they were turned back in. And, my brother came in at this time where we were basically, I call the typewriter age. Everything was done, paper docs,
Yeah.
typewriter, whiteout. My dad loves to joke. There's an employee in the office who's basically been here since like the day he opened. Her name's Kim, and she, he always says, "Oh, Kim used to, push out contracts in like a
Right.
half hour. Like we had 5 sets, and she needed to be out of here by 5.
Yeah.
And she is such a fast typist at the time."
Yeah. Typing was a skill in those days. How many
Yeah.
words per minute you can type. I don't know if your dad had them, but I remember, I think it was IBM or whatever. They had the electric typewriter, and they came out with the first like duplicating machine. It was basically a computer with punch cards, and you would type the letter and it would produce this punch card that matched. And then if you need another one, you'd stick the punch card in and the thing would type for you and redo the thing. But there was no electronic. It was a real, thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. So at that point, so they were leasing used vehicles, like on the commercial side, they would release used vehicles. Cause obviously in the consumer side, you're really only leasing new vehicles, right?
Yeah. And that's actually one of the niches that we're in, is we really try to understand the collateral and our customers' use case for these vehicles. So we have a much stronger comfort level of going out and leasing a 7-year-old tow truck to someone.
You still do that
the,
today? Lease a used vehicle? Oh, okay.
I would say 70% of our business is leasing used vehicles.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize
because they will maintain their value.
Yeah.
The customer now that looks to go buy a new dump truck, they're walking out the door with a $200,000 vehicle.
Yeah, they can't afford it.
And in a lot of cases, if you have a good mechanic and you have good processes in place, you can get a 2012, 2013, Peterbilt, for half the price, even less. The price, right? And it's one of those things where if you kind of find these niches and these, unique areas where you have a little bit more expertise and you kind of use your own, quote unquote leverage, then you can kind of really carve out a moat for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting because the lease price on a $200,000 vehicle, even leasing it, is unaffordable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is like the area that we've started to really play in, is finding out these niches, specific industries. We have a really nice foothold in the towing industry, heavy equipment, dump trucks, car carriers. And we're the type of family, when we're driving on the highway, we're always looking, right. Who's the name on the side of the vehicle?
Yeah, right. Because it
they
says,
have an address,
right?
they have a phone number, we can, reach out to them. Oh, that's a cool truck. And we have a couple of interns that are working with us this summer. And I said, you're going to start driving on the street and you're going to start really noticing the different types of trucks that, drive by.
Right.
And basically, kind of to, bring it back a little bit, when we had this other, used truck lot, my brother kind of came in, he really modernized the system. So he took us out of the typewriter era. He started using an access database and bringing us into, how can we become more efficient? Mm-hmm. And I, again, 10 years younger, I was basically in high school, not even in college yet. And what happened is we found another niche with some of these heavy trucks. We were in the paper shredding. We were financing paper shredding trucks.
These are trucks that are equipped to do shredding in the truck, like a mobile.
Yeah. Think of it like a really beefy, big box truck that has a gigantic shredder inside of it. And they'll lift up what looks like a garbage pail filled with paper. And you'll go to a law firm, you'll go to a hospital, you go to an architecture firm that has sensitive information that needs to be properly destroyed. Right. And they'll go through and they'll shred it.
Yeah, because they don't want you taking it off site and they're wondering, well, I hope they shredded it. I can't testify to that they shredded it. Yeah. They need to see that you shredded it. Healthcare, law, right. Okay, well, the mobile makes sense, right?
And we wound up being, a really big financing source in this industry. And we were seeing people in 2004, 2005, just doing really well, making, really good money. And my brother went to my dad at the time. He's like, listen, I think there's an opportunity here for us to get into this business and learn about it.
As to do the shredding yourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he wound up, starting Safe Shredding, which was a local paper shredding truck. He started with one truck. I remember the day he got it. That was basically like my summer job. I was, on the truck
driving around.
we would go in the beginning, we'd go to like a resident's house who needs to, move and has a bunch of, garbage bags filled with paper.
Right.
Go to the law firms. I had a internship at a local law firm, and they had a console. So they were one of the first customers. And
you certainly had an in to get the vehicle though. So you get that wholesale, right? So that helps.
Absolutely. And that was kind of the idea, is like we had a little bit of leverage to apply. We're a leasing company. We help, finance and fund these large vehicle purchases. So there's an opportunity here with a very expensive piece of equipment that we have a bit more, opportunity in this space. And anyway, long story short, the company grew from a one truck operation up to a fleet of, 7 or 8. And then in 2018, we had the opportunity to sell the business to a company out of Canada.
Right. And now they're bigger players that are acquiring smaller companies and looking to grow. And it's easier for them to buy your roots, basically is what they're buying, right? And they're
buying the roots and, and some of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And they still work out of the same office building. But what happened is in 2018 and 2017, as, this, sale was kind of going through, we noticed another opportunity. We noticed that there's another aspect to the destruction, the data destruction, which was on hard drives and computer recycling.
Right.
So my brother and I, we started a company called Tech Shredders.
Right.
And the problem that we were trying to solve is that we would go to a lot of offices. They had all this paper, and, the secretary would say, oh, by the way, we have these 10 computers. They have all the same data that we just, printed out on the hard drives, and they're just in the back office. Can you take care of these and destroy them?
Right. Because you don't want that out there, and people know how to mine that data. And if you're a law firm, it's sensitive. You might have stuff from a lawsuit. Yeah. All that type of stuff.
And we wound up creating, Tech Shredders. And the idea was, how can we service the small, medium-sized business? We felt that we had a really great, background to draw on, because we had these paper shredding trucks, and, we had like the business model down.
Right.
And the first thing we realized is like the business model is very different. While the end result and the pain point for the customer is the same, how the business operates is uniquely different. So paper shredding is a great, business on its surface, because it's route based and it's recurring revenue. I come to your office once a month, once every 2 weeks.
You're always producing paper. You're always getting in stuff you got to shred. Right.
And the hard drive, I go and I shred your hard drives. You probably don't need my service for, 3 years.
Right. At least.
But what we stumbled on in that business is the managed service and IT space. There's so many IT companies in New Jersey that basically are the IT person for small businesses.
Right.
And we figured out maybe this is where we can make this, like, instead of a recurring revenue like the paper shredding, more reoccurring, where an IT company can, essentially white label our service and offer it.
Right. Yeah, because they're replacing equipment if the company's big enough all the time. It's just in different departments, right? So it's 5 years, they got to replace 3 years, all the computers get replaced. They got to know that those other ones have been destroyed, that aren't accessible by anybody.
Yeah. And it's one of those things too. They don't even want to get involved in it a lot of times. First off, there's a liability standpoint. Do they want to be taking a customer's old computer, transporting it? What happens if the technician loses it? And and now, by the way, it's in their possession. How are they going to destroy it? We get calls from IT companies all the time. Oh, I have 500 hard drives. I go, did you just get them? Oh, no, we've been holding on to these for
in our warehouse. Right. Well, it's like the paper, right? You want to have a mobile service so that people know you're shredding it. But the shredding, Justin, is not the same as paper shredding, right? You're not taking the hard drive and putting it through some machine that chops it into little pieces. Are you? Or are you?
Yeah, no, we are absolutely. So what happened is, with the paper shredding, the truck would come to you, you would see it. And what we did is we took a ProMaster, like big, Sprinter van.
Okay.
And we put a hard drive, a physical hard drive shredder. So the drives physically get cut through. It goes through the machine and it cuts it into little pieces. And people get to see it on the big screen TV and watch it getting destroyed. And it does have that peace of mind. There's other technologies out there to wipe a drive with a magnet or with, software that writes ones and
drill
zeros.
a hole through it, right? Would that be enough? No, they're probably not enough. You might still be able to access data, right?
And the other thing too, what's funny about drilling a hole is it's easy when you have like 1 or 2 drives.
Right, 500 of them is like not good.
When you have like 70 or 80 and you have the intern in the back office taking a drill, make sure you, have a really good workers' comp or good
Right.
insurance.
Extra
'Cause then you
drill bits, eyewear protection. Now, what happens when, I know we're talking more about entrepreneurship, but so you shred the drive, right? It's only, what happens to that stuff? Does it get recycled, melted down? What happens to it?
Yeah. So our process is we, work with an end, downstream recycler. They will take the metal and they'll extract it.
Got
And,
it.
a
They
lot of
sort it all
times
out, basically.
they'll sort it out. And there's other opportunities too with the computer. So we really try to frame ourselves as we're on the data security side. We
Yeah.
destroy the data on site. If you have laptops, desktops, monitors, other related electronics, we'll take that away for recycling as well. And then we'll work with different downstream recyclers. Sometimes we'll refurbish it. The secret kind of in the recycling space is that it's not super environmentally friendly to recycle something as compared to refurbishing it. If you can refurbish
Right.
something,
Obviously. Sure.
that is the ultimate.
Right.
Mhm.
Like in Israel, when they used to take I don't know if they still do it, but I remember the trucks used to have the Coca-Cola bottles. They would sanitize them and they refill them because the bottles had all these banging marks on
Yeah,
them from the
yeah.
truck. They wouldn't crush them and make new bottles. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if that works anymore, but so okay. And Tech Shredders is still an operational business, right? It's
Yeah,
pretty busy, right?
we basically got the truck towards the end of 2018. 2019
Okay.
was our first, real, in business, so to say. And it started out, I was on the truck driving it. I remember the first client
You
we
got to
had,
do, right? Yeah.
the first client we had was a law firm.
Okay.
And, I went in there and I have an idea of how to open up a desktop, but they sent me into the back room and there's 30 computers. It's raining outside. I'm
Yeah.
sweating, trying to take this stuff out. And I always say with entrepreneurship, you really have to do the work initially first. You really have to understand the process that you're going through. Because if you want to create systems and you want to, remove yourself and not be working in the business, but on the business, you
Right.
first have to work in it. You have to have an idea of what is my technician going to go through?
Yeah.
How am I going to get customers? And I was the first, technician on the truck. I had my little ID card and, drive into law firms. And it is a little bit humbling because, my parents, they sent me to college and they sent me to law school, not to be like a, more in the trade,
Truck
so to
driver.
say, but I'm walking in, but you have to swallow any pride you have when you're doing,
Of course.
a physical
Plus,
labor.
I think it gives you an appreciation for the people that are working for you later on when you understand and you're asking of them, do this, what their limitations are going to be, what their obstacles are going to be, all that type of stuff. I think your comment, though, really is an important one because a lot of people that go into business, they don't do the planning ahead of time. They don't write a business plan or an operations manual or strategic, whatever their business idea. And then they also don't continue to work through that plan to figure out, okay, what's not going to work? What are these obstacles? How come I can't get these sales? Oh, I found out that law firms don't want us to take them off site. And then they want to know that it's happening right there, that type of stuff. And I think people, first, they don't do the first step. And even if they do the first step, then they put it on a shelf. They're like, oh, I did my business plan. That's done. I'm like, well, that's not the way it really works. That's an ongoing process, developing your business and developing your systems and coming up with manuals of operation. And, how do you manage your truck fleet, right? So now you got 7 or 8 trucks. So one of them breaks down and you know what I mean? So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that a lot of your experience, because I was telling you, you really are a serial entrepreneur. You've seen other opportunities. And, well, that's an opportunity. We could build a business around that. But you also develop skills as you go from, business to business to business. And a lot of people don't do that. They don't develop those skills. I don't know why, but they don't. And they have trouble making a transition. So I think there's a lot to be said for maybe it has to do with going to law school and writing. And I don't know, but whatever, you have something in you that kind of recognizes the right way to do it, the right way to say, okay, let me break this. Let me figure out what doesn't work. Because things won't work, right? We're not stupid. We both know that if we start a business, like you mentioned which business were we talking about where you found out, oh yeah, that the software that you built, right? You found out that when the people were actually using it, it wasn't all the things you were focusing on that was going to be the issue. It's the fact that they just broke this thing. They're not using it the way you think they're going to use it. So a lot of that stuff is test marketing and trying out what you're doing and being out there right? Driving the truck and meeting the customers, that's worth 20 years of experience, of sitting behind a desk and having someone else do it.
It's a really important point. You really have to understand what pain you're solving, because you're going to have a theory, you're going to have a hypothesis. This is what the problem is.
Right.
Even with tech shredders, we thought the main problem was just small businesses don't have access to this and everybody's holding on to hard drives. And while that is kind of the case, it might not necessarily be the same pain point as a law firm that has paper overflowing where they need to really get rid of it.
Right.
But the pain point might be greater for an IT company or a data center that we had no experience in. But the most important thing was to build some momentum and to actually take action.
Yeah.
A lot of times people will have like an idea. I really focus a lot on sales with InTech. That's really my core competency. With tech shredders, it's creating sales processes and doing outreach. And even that is
it's all business development, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what drives the business, right?
Absolutely.
No sales, no development. Doesn't matter what kind of systems you have. Might as well go home.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things too, is how do you have a system? Because sales is very psychological. It's like, it's the ultimate like business hand-to-hand combat. There's so much psychology. Oh, I don't want to pick up the phone. What if they, don't, want my service? Oh, I send an email and then they don't respond. Does that mean they didn't like it?
Yeah. The psychology of always talking yourself out of these problems that probably don't exist. 8 out of 10 times you're worried about this is not true.
And that's really where I've spent a lot of the past year and a half focusing on systems. How do we get a prospect? How do we put them through a funnel? If it's, going through cold outreach, have multiple touch points, and be able to understand, is this a prospect worth following up on, investing more resources in? Is this someone that, is going to be a quick no? And if you have a process for that, you can take a lot of the emotion out of it.
Yeah. Well, that eliminates your mistakes from your emotions, right?
Yeah. I'll give you
investment strategies. If you stick to a strategy, even if you're like, I think this is going to go higher, but your rule is, listen, it triples, I sell it, whatever. You stick to that, you're going to be okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll give you a quick story from this past week.
Great.
We have a summer intern. He's actually through, or a spring/summer intern. He's through a program at the local high school. And the focus of his internship was really going to be around sales and marketing. And with InTech, we didn't really do a lot of cold outreach. We really had focused on, we have a really good recurring existing customer base that, does additional leases. We do a lot of referral business. I mean, we've been in business for 35 years, so those are natural things.
Of course.
And we've never done a lot of cold outreach. So what I wanted to do with his internship is to come up with a program, a cold outreach program. How do we reach out to towers and dump truck operators and take, the truck you see on the side of the road
on a systematic basis, not like a one-off, right?
Yeah. Because a lot of times you send an email, they don't respond. Oh, they're not interested. That's not the case. They're probably very busy.
It's usually not, right? They're just busy.
So we sat down together, we started building out a funnel. So the first thing is, we get their email address. And, one of the beautiful things about, today with the internet is just like how much data is out there. If you do a little bit of digging,
so much data. We
found out basically every company that is registered with the Department of Transportation has an email address on file.
And you can get access to that data,
You can get access to it. So boom, we have an email address.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, we have their physical address.
Right.
So now we have 2 touch points. Oh, and we also have their phone number. So now we have 3 ways that we can touch them. So the first thing we do is we send them an email. And we do a little bit of research about them, what kind of trucks they have. We mentioned something that maybe they posted on Instagram or Facebook.
Right. So there's some familiarity. They know that you're actually not a robot. Yeah.
And then we have a follow-up email that goes out 2 or 3 days later. And then after that, we'll send them a Facebook message. Right. And then after that, we'll give them a phone call.
Right.
And if they don't pick up, we'll send them a funny letter in the mail.
Yeah.
But now we have 5 ways that we can touch them, as opposed to, let me just send out an email.
And then, they're not responding. We didn't get any business out of that. Listen, I think it's a very important point. And for those people listening, and I know people say, I don't want to sell or whatever. Funnels is what it's all about. I don't care what business you're in. If you're doing any kind of marketing, digital marketing, snail mail marketing, whatever. If you don't have a system that brings people into your, your little tornado there and work them through the system, so the person that are really interested drop out of the bottom, you are missing the whole strategy. And look, law firms are notorious for this. You ever go to a law firm website? They have their practice areas, they have their partners. They're like a billboard on a highway that no one's driving down. And I hate to say it, but 90% of the websites that I see, there should be a reason why you bring somebody to a page on your website through, like you said, through an email, whatever it is. There's got to be a reason why they're there, right? You want to educate them, get them through the funnel, into the funnel, on your mailing list, requesting information, setting up an appointment, whatever it is. And people don't do that. And I think that's a huge point.
And to touch on that too, I think a lot of the head trash people have is they think they need to sell the person immediately.
Right.
When they come to your website,
that's
they
the
might
worst
not be
thing
ready
you
to
should do,
buy
right?
something for 6 months.
Yeah. Right.
Especially with, financing a truck. We were reaching out to someone to finance a $500,000 rotator. This is a huge purchase.
Yeah.
The chances
if you don't
that
make that decision on an email,
the chances that I email them and they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. I was just about to buy a $500,000 tow truck.
I'm mailing you a check.
No, there has to be a process.
Right.
And so to kind of, tie back to the story. So this intern's coming in, I'm trying to explain to him, success is not getting everybody to respond. Yes. Like success might be 4% of people say, hey, I'm willing to work with you. That'd be huge. Cold outreach, 4%. And we've been emailing for the past week. And I'm showing him, look, this is the person who's opening up 2-3 times.
Right. Because
there's something here.
Stuff,
they don't open up an email 3 or 4 times if they think it's spam.
Right.
And now we'll follow up again. We followed up yesterday with someone and they wrote back, hey, thanks for reaching out, but I'm not ready to buy anything right now.
Contact me in 6 months. But now
boom,
they're interested. They want to stay in touch.
And then the best thing, we got so lucky because I will be honest, when you're lucky and when you're good.
Luck counts. You do enough good things, luck happens. I think you make your own luck.
We were a week into this, new strategy that we're doing. And I said to him, we need to focus on at minimum 3 new leads a day coming through this funnel.
Right. That you mean something that you like flag and say, hey, that looks like something we should focus on based on what they're doing. Is that
we'll have a prospecting list. And I say every day we're going to send out a minimum of 3 new prospects. So we get the list rather from the Department of Transportation, through Instagram, Facebook, we get all their information. And then every day we're going to send out 3 leads.
Right.
To start.
And what happens? Their email's now in your funnel and they're going to go through the steps, like they get this. And if they do X, they get Y. Okay.
And to make it even become really simple, we're not even really automating this yet. We will eventually automate it. But right now, I have it in my HubSpot.
Right.
And I have my templates in my HubSpot.
Because you're testing it.
And I'm just going through and I have a task every day, send 3 more. This day, sends the follow-up email. And yesterday we sent out an email to a tower. I had a personalized line that, I saw they had towed a school bus. My son is 18 months old. His favorite book is called Red Truck. It's about a tow truck that saves a school bus.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I said that in the line, I saw you guys saved a school bus. It's my son's favorite book. 5 minutes later, he opens the email 3 times, and then he called the office.
Yeah, boom, you got one. Better be lucky than right all the time.
And I was explaining, I was like, this is like, you can't count on this every time.
No, of course not.
But this is what developing a system is, because when we started sending it in the beginning of the week on Monday and no one was responding, it's very easy to be like, all right, I sent it to like 10 people. Right. It didn't work.
Yeah, but that's not true.
And that's really, again, even go back to like the story of entrepreneurship. Like you have to create a bit of a system and take some emotion out of it. You're always going to have emotion.
Right. But you need to reduce the impact, the negative impact that your emotions could have on your business. Mm-hmm. Right. I want to say 2 things. One is you look much too well rested to have an 18-month-old because I got 3 older kids and I was with a friend of mine last night. He was like a wreck and he's got a 6-month-old.
All of that goes to my wife. She's an amazing superstar. So.
All right. Well, we have that recorded, so that's good. The other thing is, I hope, now this is going to be several months before this episode comes out, but I hope this kid, I don't know if it's a girl or a guy, the intern, and maybe he's going to college or whatever, appreciates what he's learning by working from you, because he could work with another 50 people and they will never show him this kind of stuff because they don't even appreciate that it's how you do things. And I don't know. So you can say, I was talking to Mitch and he told me, you better appreciate the shit that I'm teaching you.
I'll make him listen to the
exactly.
episode.
You listen to the unedited piece. You have to check. So
but one thing with the intern, he's really helped me push this forward because I had essentially shelved this a little bit. I had a lot of different things that I'm working on. Yeah. And this is an extremely important thing. How do we systematize this? And I was explaining to the intern, we're doing the hand-to-hand combat, but we're going to document our process. Oh, and then by the way, in 2 months, you're not going to be prospecting anymore. We'll go on a site like Upwork and we have a manual on how to find Instagram, find Facebook. You always have to kind of think from that aspect is like, how can I do something? And then you have to give yourself a week where you say, I need to take a step back and write down this process.
Yeah. If you or you're going to be doing it yourself for the rest of your life. You can't,
100%.
That's the difference between working in the business, working on the business. That's the E-Myth, right? To be able to say, okay, here's the manual. I'm going down the street to my office. I don't need to be here anymore. And that's what an entrepreneur wants to do, because that's what improves the quality of your life eventually, you know?
And improves the quality of your life and allows you to focus on higher level tasks. And I do apologize if you hear the background. My dad has these crazy clocks in his office. So.
That's okay. You might hear a truck backing up outside of my building. So,
well, if it's a good truck, take a photo.
There's a lot to be said for that. Yeah, Jeff Bezos doesn't sweep the floors of the warehouse anymore, but he did. But he's a business builder. That's the difference. I think people have to recognize that. Am I a builder of businesses, or am I a person who owns a business who also happens to be an employee? I hate to say it that way.
It's very tough though, because you have a system where you might be making good money as a painter or as an electrician. And well, how do I now train someone? I don't have the time.
Right.
And it's a catch-22.
Got to figure it out. If you don't have a
process, you'll be the one-man band. And then when you go to sell your business, you'll just have yourself versus if you can force yourself to get uncomfortable, and that's what's beautiful right now with, I think, entrepreneurship and the ability to leverage a remote workforce on a system like Upwork or to hire an intern. And it takes a lot of time to say, I'm not going to focus on this one thing. I'm going to neglect it for a little bit.
Right.
But the reality is we're not, curing cancer, and it's not heart surgery. It's not life or death. If something gets neglected for a week or two so I can build a better system, that thing that got neglected will thrive.
Right. Or you're never going to get to the next level. I think there's also a lot to be said for what you said, which is, documenting what you're doing as you're going through it. So you don't end up being a painter for 5 years and then saying, oh shit, I got to stop my business and maybe I'm living hand to mouth to document this. If you do it along the way, it's like if you're a chef, right? If you're a chef, you're not going to be cooking everything all the time. So if you don't make everything and then try and figure out what the recipe was later on, you got to kind of, make notes as you go. So then when you actually sit down and say, okay, I have to create a guide for this, a manual, you have a lot of the stuff, as opposed to trying to go back and say, well, how did that work? What did we do? I don't remember, because you won't remember. And memories are terrible.
And the two biggest points I'd like to add to that is, one, it does not have to be complex.
Right.
Start either with a pen and
shouldn't
paper.
Be, right?
Or start with a Google Doc. I love Google Docs because they're editable. You can go back and see the history. You can hyperlink to things on it on different websites.
Comments. Yeah.
That is the most important thing, is like, just start really, really simple. And the second thing is, you have to force yourself to start just doing it. There's never going to be a playbook. You can copy from other people. Like, I'll give you another great example. This cold email that we're starting with.
Yeah.
I took a class that I found someone on Twitter that was teaching this, cold emailing class. And the first cold email that I sent, to this tow industry, I literally copied his email.
Yeah.
And start with that. And now I'll tweak it. Now I'll adjust some of the copy. Right. But don't feel you always have to reinvent the world. It's a process of, someone's probably done something similar, but you have to start acting. Because if you just sit back and say, like, I'm not going to do this, you're going to wind up, being a entrepreneur almost.
Yeah, no, you're right. A lot of it is actions not taken. And I also think, like you said, if you want to write a business plan or you want to create a manual for this or that, there's information all over the place. So go find a trucking company, a leasing company that wrote a business plan and got published. I have some companies that have been looking to get into cannabis. Well, part of it is you're going to have to, in order to get a license, you got to be sharp. You got to have a business plan. You got to have a security plan. You got to have all this stuff. I said, did you do a search and find out if there's business plans written by cannabis companies in Colorado or whatever? Sure enough, they were there. Not going to steal their information, but it's a track to run on. So like you said, you don't sit down with a white piece of paper and go, what do I do? That's not a good way to do things. But I think it's all great advice for people listening, because these aren't, like, you and I are not like work at such a level that we're the only ones that can do this. It's the things that people are unwilling to do. Not that they can't do it. They can do it, but they don't. And a lot of these families don't make it to second, third generations. A lot of businesses aren't able to sell themselves. You got to have those objectives in place. But I appreciate you coming on and talking to me about it. Tell me where you are right now with the businesses. What do you got coming up? And, as we close this out, and how people can find out about Intech and tech shredders and all that type of stuff.
Absolutely. So with the businesses, I do split my time with tech shredders and Intech. Again, I'm really focusing on sales and kind of creating some systems with the businesses. Tech shredders, right now we're still with one truck, and we have a full-time technician. So I'm not on the truck anymore. Okay. And the other side, Intech, really focusing on, specific niche verticals, trying to find that additional paper shredding or tow industry or dump truck. And in terms of finding me, I'm very active actually on Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you're on Twitter, at JM Reitman, and on LinkedIn, Justin Reitman. I'm also on, Instagram and Facebook, but that's more like, baby pictures.
Right. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes so people can find you. But Justin, I can't thank you enough for joining me and for taking the time. And I look forward to, staying in touch and working together and see how the business grows. And
absolutely. And I just want to thank you for letting me share not only my story, but also my family's story. It's one thing where, again, I always try to harp back to, there was a point where I really had so much head trash about working in a family business. And I've been able to see how my brother started a paper shredding company from this, how we've started hard drive shredding, and there are other opportunities to use Intech as like the core foundation. Right. And there's a gentleman that I actually connected with on Twitter who basically took over his father's plumbing company. And over time, he would acquire 1 or 2 man plumbing shops and started investing in real estate. He just recently bought a septic company. Right. And I was fascinated by this person because he has this blueprint now of what is a family business? Foundation, it's a living organism. It's evolving. And if you think you're going to go to a family business and it's a failure because, like someone else started it, not the case. There's opportunity to reinvent it, or you'll need to reinvent it. Right. And 2, there's an opportunity to just to work with your family that, don't take for granted. So if someone does have that opportunity and they're thinking about working in a family business, I would definitely highly recommend it. There's obviously a lot of stress and a lot of personalities, right? But family, being able to talk about it and, share this story is something that, I hope I can inspire someone else. And I do appreciate you having me on and, talking about tech from the 80s and, how we got to today. So.
All right. Well, thanks, Justin. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.